Hi, everybody. This is Heather Lockett with Lasting Conversations, and I have a very warm welcome for a dear heart friend of mine, Lisa Bolton. Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
Hi. Listen, that you are traversing literal mountaintops around the world, and you and I have been able to tap in today from your home base of California is really extraordinary, and I really appreciate your time. So thank you and welcome again.
Happy to be here.
Great. So one of the many reasons I really wanted to tap in for not just me, because I am sheer curiosity, but for all of us around the globe is that you are an literal global traveler. You're scaling mountain peaks. I don't know of a corner of the world you haven't seen yet, but maybe there is, and maybe you have a bucket list. So I think my first curiosity, Lisa, is whether you have, well, let's just start with, did you come from, say, corporate world, or you had a chapter of your life and now you're in a completely different chapter that has allowed you this freedom to literally go anywhere and be with the wind?
Interesting question. So I'll back up a little bit and give you some background. Yes, I've been in corporate. I've been a vice president for a private company, responsible, with a team of 10, responsible for 25 countries, 25,000 employees in the human resources arena. And during COVID, we were working remotely, and I was getting more and more disconnected. And at a certain point, we mutually agreed to terminate or separate. Right. So I had this, now what do I do? I started my own company for human resources consulting. But what started to happen was I got more interested in traveling. And then that was in 2021, still working on doing things. So in the background, I'm doing the human resources consulting, up to 7 clients at one time, 3 computers. And I had decided before I turned 60, I wanted to at least go to 60 countries. And I was somewhere in the mid 40s, almost at 50 countries.
60 before 60.
You
had 60 before 60 goal. Oh my goodness.
So I said, okay. And I started planning that. And that was 2021. And so I was started with 1 country a month, and I was trying to work remotely. And I've been to some amazing countries. And I'm always, the thing that I love about travel, I'm passionate about, is seeing a new country, meeting new people, seeing places. And the second thing is challenging myself. So the second overlay is during COVID, I had long COVID before they called it was COVID. And I had 1 month where I couldn't walk my dog. And I'm thankful it wasn't like I didn't have an extreme case of COVID. To me, it was I couldn't get up a hill. I said, oh my gosh, I can't get up this hill that I've been walking for the past 5 months. What's wrong with me? And what do I want to do? And that kind of started me off on, I want to travel, and I want to travel more than I want to be in a corporate world. So continuing on with that, after I got to the 60 countries, I said, why am do I need to stop? And I didn't need to stop. So that was December last year. And I'm coming up. So I was still working remotely up until, and forgive me, I'm a little bouncing all over the place.
No, you're perfect. It's absolutely great. I can't even imagine how many time zones your body and brain are used to.
I had an epiphany during 2022. I decided I didn't want to work anymore. I had a year off. I was allowed to take a year off from all the work I've done. And I stopped my remote work and took a hike with my son in September of 2022. And we hiked Annapurna Circuit for 2 weeks in Everest Base Camp. And that was the beginning of my second year of travel. What I'm just finishing is the real full year of travel. And I got home a week or two ago, and I said, where do I go next?
Well, a friend of mine locally here in Florida is a travel agent, and one of the things that she said for her and her own heart, and she has simplified her home base. Had kind of tangentially, we were talking about downsizing, and I had just sold my home, and I was on a road trip, and that in her world, because travel is so important to her, her home base is affordable and simple so that she can just pack a bag and go. Also, so she has her home base, but she says, I just don't feel complete if I need to have a plane ticket to somewhere. I just need a personal itinerary to somewhere. And then that's what feeds her, that makes her happy. And then she's brilliant with her clients and customers. So I hear you in terms of, well, then what's next? And then what's next? And I also appreciate what you were saying about stretching and for me personally, what be stretching comfort zone. So let's go from here. You had COVID, and that's all very respiratory. It's all about breathing and how can one breathe and keep up that way. I myself am kind of in a bit of an asthma scenario that is winding down, but when I see your photo, so you were at Base Camp Everest. That's one of the many pinnacles of location where there's not much oxygen. This is a huge physical stretch to do it. So perhaps how did you I don't want to say overcome, but there is a certain transcending oneself to go from, wow, I really feel like crap. My body is in a certain way. I can't walk my dog up this quote simple hill. And now you're at Base Camp Everest. So walk us through that piece of it, because I find it fascinating.
I think after that, I started hiking, obviously, trying to get better. It's really easy in California. I'm 2 blocks away from a trailhead. Mm-hmm. So I just started walking more and more, being part of groups that you do meetups, and you go for a 5-mile hike, you go for a 2-mile hike, you go for a 10-mile hike. And that just kept me going when I was here in the States. And now I feel uncomfortable if I'm not taking a hike for 6 miles as my exercise almost every other day.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And I guess as I started traveling more and more, you do much more when you're walking around and seeing things. Mm-hmm. And I love the natural part, seeing nature at its best. So I started planning little trips. Oh, no, I went to Galapagos, Ecuador, went to Galapagos, and then I wanted to go to the mountain climb Cotopaxi, which is about 5,500 meters, which is, I don't know, 16,000 feet or so. I have to look at the math, or we'll look at it later. And in order to do that, I said, let me do a 3-day hike. And I did a 3-day hotel to hotel hike, or they call it hut to hut. Mm-hmm. And I started at 4,000 meters going down, and that's the Kiloto crater. And I was amazed at myself that I was able to do about 10 miles a day, and with a small little day pack, basically, because it was 300.
And this is kind of rough terrain too, right? This is not exactly the simple walk in the woods.
No, it's a known hike. And you have to deal with dogs that bark at you, and cows that don't get out of the path. I think my scariest thing there was a swinging bridge.
Oh, wow.
And I couldn't do it. So I was like, no, I keep walking. So I went over a log with basically a wire that you held onto, and that was your handhold. And you were going over this river, not a raging river at that point, but pretty much. But I couldn't do the swinging bridge at all. And then when I got to Everest, I was doing all of the high bridges all by myself after like the 10th one. So that was when you think of a challenge, I was like scared I wouldn't look down, because you think you'd fall through the cracks of the bridge.
So, oh my gosh, there's so much to draw from here. So with Everest, did you actually ascend up to certain parts of Everest, or are you base camp for you was the pinnacle?
Base camp is like a normal hike that you do in the spring or the fall.
Right.
And it's the beginning part of where they start to ascend. for
Right.
ascending Everest at the top, which is 8,000 meters. My son and I got to 5,300 meters, which is where the big rock is, and you see Everest Base Camp. But no one's there anymore in the
Oh,
fall.
right. Oh, wow. And your photos are extraordinary, and it does literally take us around the world when you can post them. And tell us about to traverse the world. And so much of the show is all about community and stretching boundaries and hope and joy. And there are a lot of people that can remain in fear spaces of the world sucks, or people are mean, or there's going to be a war anytime soon, or any of that. And I'm afraid. And
yeah,
you are just living in the world. And share from your perspective. You've been to Thailand, and you're in villages, and you are in some ways it's easy to get to a mountain and you're by yourself. But tell us about the people and who you're with, and are you traveling with others, or that notion of village within villages across this universe.
That's interesting. So traveling as a solo traveler, and I've just come back from the April till August is the big trip. And
Okay.
Just to give you an overview, I went to India, Bhutan, which was the purpose of the trip, Nepal, and into Tibet for Mount Kailash, which is a pilgrimage hike, and then Sri Lanka, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Taiwan. So it was almost 3 months, the longest trip. And when I link it back to community, I can do it from a couple different ways. One, the fellow travelers on the trip and who you meet with, the local people that you meet. And I think a sense of, I want to say travelers, whoever I meet along the way, if it's not their first trip, you sit down and you walk or you hike or you talk kind of over coffee, whatever it is, about where you're going or what you've been, and get insight from each other as to what to do next, or enjoy their time or their relationship with the world. I've met amazing people, but I cannot say when I think about community and like a group of people that you're always with, that I don't experience at all.
Right. Well, and that's okay, because the journey is meant individually ultimately. And the difference, I've always thought there is a difference between a traveler and a tourist. And you are a journeyer. You are I know that there's a better vocabulary word here, that you are of this earth plane and the waters. And you've actually scuba dived, and you've done water things, and you've mountain things, and
yeah,
I can't think of a thing that you haven't done. I've been Hawaii, and waterfalls and rainbows, and
I'm trying to think. I actually, if you ask me places to go or thing, and Hawaii is not on the top because it's so expensive compared to going to a place or similar. Versus to a place like Tahiti, where it's exotic, it's different. It may still have palm trees and all of that, but very different. And I was just in St. John's, and I felt that it was very American, but it was in a beautiful setting. That was interesting. So I'm sorry, I'm off of community.
No, that's quite all right. Because I think the point that I was sort of circling into is, obviously community starts with self, right? Where is it that we're feeling at home, and the whole notion of meeting people along the way. And I did that on my road trip within the States. I was in many ways a witness bearer of looking at other people in their community, the local coffee shop or diner, and even people who joined in for a conference. If I was in a bigger hotel and they're having a convention, and they're kind of scrumming around in their community. So I'm always the observer. So it's observer of self, but observer of everybody else in community. And maybe you do something similar along your paths, going through Thai villages, or going into Nepal, or into these other locations.
I guess I could say what's really interesting is how inclusive people are,
Hmm.
and how responsive they are to a single woman traveling on her own. Whether it's the locals. I mean, in Samoa and American Samoa, they just loved me and took care of me.
Oh,
And just like I was just like in shock. I was eating by myself, and the owner came down and started talking with me, and I was just amazed. I was like, no, please go back. And, I'm happy eating by myself. I'm so used to it. But she felt part of her culture. So, and her upbringing was not to have people sit by themselves. So it was like,
well, that's a beautiful thing. Here, let's eat together and have that communal company.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So that was neat. Nepal, Sri Lanka, people were just amazing. But it definitely was more of an observer, uh,
Hmm.
an outsider looking in versus being inclusive. And Fiji as well was another inclusive. They just came up and, they give you a hug and talk to you, and you just like, okay, you know. So very different cultures all around.
Oh, so beautiful. Do you have favorite places? And well, we'll get to the home part in a second, home base. But do you have certain favorite places so far, certain continents? And have you been to Africa? Have you hit all the continents yet?
Yes, I've hit all the continents. I went
Yeah.
to Antarctica, and that was the last one for me. And that was in December, January of this year of 2023. I did an Antarctica cruise, and I also did Patagonia. And
Spectacular. I mean, you're if we don't have time today, but if we literally took a spreadsheet and listed or looked at a globe at where Lisa has traveled, forget where's Waldo, where's Lisa?
yeah,
It is spectacular.
yeah, my kids
It's
laugh when they say
spectacular.
they're going to set up an Instagram of where my mom didn't take me. Uh,
Oh my
And I
gosh,
think
that
the
is
most
so cute.
things I like, to your sense of fear, and to anybody else who's thinking about it, just try it. There's
Yeah,
many ways to jump in and travel and see who you are versus when you stay in your own world and community, it gives you a sense of strength, um, but it doesn't test your boundaries.
right.
And I'm, as a traveler, I'm probably the worst type of traveler because I'll book the first 2 nights, and I'm not a planner. Let me put it that way. So I will book the first 2 nights if I have over 12 hours jet lag, and then I'll figure out what I want to do. But I will do the studying and analysis before of the key things that I want to see. But for someone who's not as adventurous or courageous, taking a tour and adding 2 days by yourself, those are things that are easy to do. And I just can't recommend just starting with something. Yeah.
Oh, exactly. Start something. And we have talked about this on the show. Even if it is a different diner down the block, it just something a little bit that stretches your boundaries and to go ahead and meet new people because it is surprising where the beautiful people are. Especially if you're feeling in a certain way and kind of curmudgeony,
Mm.
just there's joy everywhere and humans are great. We can be challenged, but humans in general are great. And if you're in an area where they're not, go somewhere else.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
hiking and getting out into nature, for
Yes.
me has just been like the most amazing thing, and really, I've also lost about 25 pounds in this process naturally without really doing anything
Yeah.
because I'm doing all the hiking or I'm doing backpacking.
Right.
Yeah, so it really, you may not meet people per se, but you will see and do things and learn more about yourself, uh, irrespective of how you travel.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's beautiful. So, I think I asked, do you have a favorite place so far? Or all of it is a favorite place?
I enjoy the experience, the unexpectedness, the uncertainty of what's happening, what I'm going to do the next day. I've gone and had met someone for coffee. Honestly, I went to this one place in Malaysia. So I'll come back to what I liked or where I would go back. But I remember I was sitting there having an ice cold coffee or something. Another couple came up and they were eating this something similar, and it was supposed to be a famous place to have this coffee or
Mhm.
drink. And I asked them where I should go. I was kind of tired of Penang. It's really small. Food is great, but the sites weren't that much. And they said, go to Sabah. I'm like, okay, I looked it up and I ended up going to the most northern part of Indonesia. They call it Mile One, and on a small island off the off of Banda Aceh of the Sumatra Island, on a whim because someone said it was the most beautiful place to go to, and it was quite amazing. More for diving than snorkeling, but so I ended up not staying there as long as I thought. Whoops, sorry, but it was really truly that's how I do things. Is someone will say something and it's basically like saying yes.
Yes.
First, yes,
Yeah.
I'll do that. Anyway.
No, I hear you completely. Then, and the word that always comes to mind for me is organic. These organic moments, or the synchronicity of it all. And that was one of the other conversations with the travel agent. For me, my trip was, I had 3 points that I knew. The rest was completely open. Even I had certain days I had no idea where I was sleeping. I knew I would have some place to sleep, and if I had to sleep in my car, but I knew that was actually never going to happen. So I appreciate what you said about, here's a landing place, or your plane is taking you here, and otherwise you are organically and or synchronistically saying yes to the next moment.
I'll tell you one more story about getting to Mount Kalash. Mount Kalash is a holy mountain for 4 religions: Buddhist, Bon, Jainism, and Hinduism. And it's in Western Tibet. And as you know, China's been closed for 3 years, as everywhere has, for COVID. So I decided.
And are they still not? Is China? And I'm sorry for my ignorance. Is China still not accepting tourisms and tours?
They're accepting tourisms.
Okay.
It's very expensive to get there right now, and it's hard to do everything.
Right.
So when I went to, knowing that I'd go to Bhutan, I said I want to try and go to Mount Kalash because it's been on my list for a long time. And I found out I needed a visa, so obviously to go into China. So I'm like, okay, let me figure out how to get a visa. I'm already in India. So I go to Calcutta for the purpose of getting a visa to China. And I got everything ready. And I didn't have a tour or anything. I was going to do that once I got into Nepal to find out how to get to Tibet. And they say you need the Tibet tour operator, and then you can get a China visa. So I got the Tibetan tour operator. I went to Calcutta and handed my information because everything on the website said, yes, you can do this. And Calcutta was actually amazing. I was surprised because I thought it would be a really hard city because of the poverty and just everything, and found people were beautiful. Took the subways everywhere. Amazing. But I get to the visa office, and they look at me, and I'm at the right time, and they're like, "You're a tourist. You have to go back to your home country to get a visa for China." End of story. It killed me. I was just like, "Oh my God!" In 5 minutes or after a week of like thinking how to do this,
right,
like shot down in 5 minutes.
I've come all this way. Yeah,
come all this way. So I go back to the beautiful hotel that I was at because it was a break. I do a lot of inexpensive hostel type hotels, and then I'll go and splurge and go to a beautiful hotel.
Right.
Outside, I was in a really nice hotel. So I get back to the hotel, and I'm online. I'm looking, and I found this tour operator that had a trip to Mount Kalash with 3 other people. So it was 4 of us. I had to decide within an hour and send him my information so we could get the Tibetan visa. Because once we got that, then we get the Chinese visa. So in Calcutta, after being turned down, I found this really great tour operator. I ended up being able to book it with them. When I got into Kathmandu in Nepal, he was able to get the visa for all of us. China changed their minds on what was required for visas during that time. And it originally had to be 3 people, minimum of 3 people, and then they changed it to minimum of 5 people on the visa. So I became the 5th person on the visa, which allowed me to get the group visa. So not only did I help myself, I helped the other people.
See, this is you keep going. Yeah.
Amazing. And we ended up, so then the next week we're off to Tibet, and we're taking an 8-hour drive to get to the new border because the old border got destroyed during the earthquake of 2015. I think it was. Yeah. And we're met, and it's like night and day between Nepal and Tibet. Tibet's modern, great roads. cameras everywhere, like wilderness. Everything you look at, you don't see people. You just see the more buffalo or the bison, whatever. What do they call the yaks? Sorry,
Right.
yaks. So it was just that was an amazing trip, and I was able to see Everest base camp from the Chinese side as well.
Oh my goodness, how special is that?
But that was
Wow.
take a drive, go to sleep in a tent where there are 50 other tents, and then have a full moon party while you're looking at the Chinese flag and listening to disco music blaring out, or modern music, techno music blaring out at you at the middle of the night. Like, it's just bizarre.
Oh my gosh, you can't make this stuff up,
No.
truly. And that whole storyline, this is the synchronicity, but it feels almost divinely guided, and that you helped 4 other people plus the tour company, that you all got to go, because bing, 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 in just the right nano moment, there it was.
Yeah, in 1 hour. In 1 hour.
There it was. Wow.
Yeah. And then we climbed, out of the 4 of us, two of them got very sick. And then I was able to make it up to, it's 5,600 meters is the top point of Mount Kailash, and you can see all the faces. Like, look it up. It's actually really neat. And then I was able to do two days out of the 3-day pilgrimage, which for me was, yeah.
Well, and so here you were then with a little group of folks. And so did that kind of become cozy, and you enjoyed that, and you had your own personal time? But is this where you kind of weave in and out, maybe traveling with some folks because you're all helping each other out, and then you're doing your solo stuff?
I ended up being solo hiking because I was faster than the other woman, and she made it. So it was really amazing. She was able to overcome her health issues, and actually get up to the top with help. But I walked an extra 10 kilometers before they said, we're going to take a car.
Get in the car.
They had to run to find me,
Oh my gosh.
Hiking away, no one around her. And I actually saw a wolf on that hike.
Wow.
But it was just beautiful, nomad, like nobody else around, or maybe there'll be 3 people ahead of you and 4 people behind you, but you just kind of keep going on the hike. That was actually really amazing.
Oh my gosh.
But back to the question that started it was, do you have a favorite country?
Yes.
So no, I have places I like to go back to because I've not really seen everything, or I just enjoy being there. China, of course, I lived there for 7 years, so I'm waiting to go back, and it's like feeling like you're in a home country. So when I was in Tibet, I was really happy. I could eat Chinese food. I could speak to everybody. Everyone there now was required to speak Mandarin. And
you can speak Mandarin?
Mandarin, yeah. And then I love to go to Fiji because I go island hopping from there. And I won't stay on the main island. I'll go off to an island, and Fiji, you go snorkeling from the water, right from the beachfront. So, and the fish are amazing. And then I would say probably Nepal, because I really like the area, and there's still so much more to see. Yeah.
Wow. So I'm glad that you touched on languages, because I was going to say, how have you been navigating the countries with all the different languaging, or how many languages can you speak actually?
No, just Chinese and English. So too. But I think what I found is there's like a traveler's language. Like, I can still speak in English and understand what people are saying back to me in their own language. Mind you, Indonesia, that was not possible. So I totally lost any idea of what someone was saying.
Interestingly, that's interesting.
But the people made up for it. They were so nice, and they'd go and find someone who did speak some English. And between your hand signals and everything, you figure things out.
I love that traveler's language. I understand what you mean. Experienced a tiny, tiny bit of that and I think that gets into when we can really listen and hear what is getting conveyed versus us being very, very specific, or what you think you've learned when you've trying to learn a new language. It's that resonance of how are we communicating,
right?
And beyond, an actual word. So yeah, the traveler's language. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Do you still have a bucket list, or where haven't you been yet? And do you consider the United States, or you really want to step out of the States to do this world traversing?
Great questions I'm working on right now. I'm looking at my list. I have about 11 places I want to see but it was probably all my bucket list a year ago was very different than the bucket list I have now. So as things get, as I see places or go to places, then I add new things. So there's
Oh, I
only
love it.
3 that are been on for a long time, I would say.
Do you
Uh,
want to share one of them, or just out of curiosity?
sure. Easter Island has been on the list.
Ah,
Kashgar and Ladakh, South Africa. I haven't done South Africa. Will be about 5 countries. I'm going to be doing the Shikoku hike in Japan, which is 1,000 kilometers and 88 temples, 40 days. But think I'm only going to do 10 days of it now. But at least I'll get started. It's like the Camino de Santiago.
okay.
Japan.
Yeah.
And
have you done the Camino?
no, that will be next year.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that's it. Northern Lights.
I am going to be very excited when I can see Northern Lights. I haven't seen them yet.
Yeah.
But, wow.
Like because I'm going to Thailand now. I'm going to try out medical travel. So I'm going to go get my teeth done in Thailand.
Okay.
And, it's a third the price, and it means I can travel for 2 months for the price of dental work in the United States.
Well, there's what other kind of nuggets like that? This is, I know there are whole medical industries and different industries and things like that, but along those lines, what else are you finding for, I guess, travel, or again, being in the world in different places than most of us are used to?
Yeah.
In our cozy zones? Or maybe that's the ultimate part of the question, is what we think is cozy is actually kind of half killing us, maybe, or financially. We know the medical strain financially is kind of wild. And so where is it that you're just finding, maybe you don't even need doctors as much as we do here, because you're doing those exercises and you're maybe eating less packaged because it's foods of the lands? And
I can definitely
you speak to any of that sort of questioning I'm having.
Sure. So I think what I learned coming back to the state, so having been away for 3 months and traveling through, I guess, Eastern Asia or Asia, the food is much better quality.
Mm-hmm.
I was eating really fresh food that had just been picked, produced, etc.
Mm-hmm.
When I came back to the States, everything had salt in it. So my body, like, now doesn't digest Western food well.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel uncomfortable eating the bread that I love, the cheese
Right.
I really, really enjoy, that I can never get in the Asian countries. But I feel not as healthy here because of all the food and the diet that I'm eating here. Our food is so removed. It's been processed in order to be cleaned and prepared and prepped. So I was in a beautiful brand new hotel, soft opening, and the food was horrific. And I was like, because it was from, a big cruise ship type environment.
Right.
It had no nutrients to it, or I could tell that.
You could tell the difference.
I could tell the difference.
Yeah.
One other thing on the medical, I'll keep you apprised on that one. I'm pretty confident. I haven't had any medical issues to speak of, other than minor little things that you get when you're traveling. Mm-hmm. So this will be the first time I'm actually using the services in Thailand versus in the US. And I'm quite happy. It's going to be much better than anything I could do here. The third thing that I do want to talk about that I'm really surprised at is the climate change and global warming, whatever you want to call it. Recycling, just how that's being done around the world. Mm-hmm. I see the destruction that we've come up with the dirty beaches, because the tides are bringing in all the plastic bottles.
Okay.
There's islands that they'll recycle the bottles, but they don't know what to do with the bottles, so it just builds in a landfill somewhere.
Yeah.
So that I've been watching more and more as a global traveler because that becomes more important. Or I just like remember like the different ways you can go to the bathroom in Asia versus here, and their plumbing system is just so different. So what we take for granted in the U.S., beautiful, clean environment, flush as many times as you want the water, versus someone's got a pail and a little cup, and that's what you use to rinse the water out of the toilet. Like that to me is just shows what are some of the things that we need to be looking at um, in our consumption, because the rest of the world is, with global warming, most of these islands will be gone. They'll be trying. I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with that one, but I feel passionate about it that we're so privileged in America that we don't see what's going on, in the changes.
Right. Now, are using the bucket and cup, is that been part of their culture, or because some water is disappearing or the usage has changed, and so their methodologies for utilizing water, plumbing, cooking waters, toileting waters have had to adapt?
I want to say the second two more than the first. They've always been going to the toilet this way or using the water
Right, this way, or squatty potties in Thailand and things. It's different
Yeah, but
in many places.
now they need more toilets. So the stress of over tourism in certain areas, that's I think the bigger what I see is another issue.
I
Because
was wondering about that. I'm glad you're bringing that up because it's very interesting to me, even seeing people's footages or in movies, but the notion of, oh, and now we're going to go to Machu Picchu and we're going to go to these places that are ancient
yeah,
and built on ancient, rubbly, tiny little roadways with these ancient bridges, or in Cairo or whatever. And the humanity of trotting in our oils and our feet and our hands, and how is that being handled? I think I heard, haven't there been some sites that have just closed? We just can't handle
oh, Fifi
people.
Island was closed for 5 years because the tourism just overrun at Fifi Islands in Thailand.
Yeah.
And they just reopened, and not just January 2021. When I went there, it was like the first time it opened in 5 years. And it's already crazy at a year and a half, right? I was just in Mount Rini Jani, which is a straight up volcano. You go up and you see a sunrise. And there was no planning as to how many people could be up there. So everyone, the tour companies were just throwing their tents up over here. They put up their little porta toilets, which is dig a hole.
Yeah.
So the next group comes in the next day and they dig another hole and they set up another 5 tents. And they had 200 people trying to climb this one small path, which maybe 2 people could get across on the top of a ridge to get to the top.
Oh,
yeah. I ended up not doing that part of it.
So then we haven't even touched on the danger factor of things like that.
Well, danger of over tourism, but
sure.
Yeah, that one to me was, some of the stuff is just shocking, like what you can do and what countries. It's not what they get away with, and I don't mean it that way.
Right.
In America, we have all our structures, and we're just like, you have to be careful. And then you go to these other countries where it's no man's world, and it's just no man's land where you can do whatever you want because it's the wilderness.
Right.
And do you need to put something in place? Indonesia was definitely feeling there needs to be more structure. Sri Lanka was amazing. Bhutan was just like out of this world. You walk through rice paddies, you don't see anybody for a day, and then you come upon the tiger nest and all these loads of people. But anyway, sorry.
No, it's beautiful.
Yeah. So each country's applying a different methodology, the same as during COVID. Each country had their own way to process or plan or not plan. So from my view, going to so many different countries, that's the things that I'm looking at now, is how different countries are applying their dollars. Indonesia is spending money on airports and roads infrastructure, but not the secondary infrastructure out to an island or something like that. So
well, maybe it's my inference is the ripple effect of if you're going to bring all these literally thousands of people in, now what? What is the infrastructure for that, including the toileting, including the water usages, and we could rabbit hole the whole thing. It's very interesting. It's so right, and I have to say the whole cruise industry. So on the one hand, we humans want to be out and explore the world, but where is enough? Where maybe a ship is bigger than the entire island. I don't know. There's just something that's kind of the juxtaposition of some of these things is a little bit jarring sometimes.
Yeah. So what was really neat in St. Thomas versus Vanuatu. Vanuatu gets these cruise ships from Australia. Explaining that so I stayed on Vanuatu as opposed to be on a cruise ship. And they said that they only allowed 3,000 people off the cruise ship at a time because there was not that many inhabitants in the country. So they would be overrun 2-1 by tourists versus locals at 3,000. So people had to live at 3,000. Yeah. A beautiful island. And then St. John's and St. Thomas. St. Thomas actually was quite interesting because we came off a flight and they're so used to the cruise ships coming on that they only had trucks that would fit, or vans that would fit 10, 12 people. And they would take you around as a taxi and you'd be the only 1-2 people in there. But they were so used to having thousands of people come through that's how they'd planned all of their, their travel or transportation.
Right.
It's really neat, like just mind-boggling.
The whole thing is mind-boggling. And Lisa, I'm really, really enjoying this chat. Is there anything else you'd love us to just know from your heart? And I'm going to go back to home base. And I reference this because I kind of learned this of myself. And a good friend of mine is on her way. She just moved from Florida. She's going up to Tennessee because she heard the calling, like a hum of another home. And so you have California, you have a house, you have your residency, that's a home base. Are you finding other parts of this world, maybe you mentioned it's China, that you have your heart home? We can have our physical home, but our heart home. For me, one of my big aha lessons for myself was that New England, I can hear it, I feel it in the land, that is my home. I have my residence here in Florida and I love it. But my heart home is in New England. Do you find this? Is it China? Is it other parts of the world? Or do you have heart homes a little all over the place?
I have to think through that concept. I'm intrigued by it. China has always been a part of me that I'll never lose. But where it is today versus the first time I went to China was 1981.
Right.
So I have a relationship with China per se, and its people. So I guess I would have to say China at that point. But does it change? That's
a very good point, right? Because exactly things change and evolve, and maybe it's just not the same.
Yeah, but it definitely right. My physical space, I have a landing pad here, but it's definitely not my. I think after the last 6 months, from last November, my home base has only been my home base. When I realized I didn't have to come home to wash my clothes and sleep in my bed anymore, then I stopped needing to be home anymore. So now it's sort of like I change things out and move on.
Wow. That just opened up a whole nother piece. Although I know we're rounding out to the end of this particular interview, but speak to that a little bit more. And maybe that's just the opening for all of us. We can do our laundry anywhere.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Right? Is that and yeah, or the notion of what is home base, and maybe we can leave it as a ... question for for
Yeah.
our listeners is, oh, what does this even mean to feel, what is it, Lisa? You've just tapped into something really
Yeah.
cool.
So usually when you go on a trip, you're so excited. You go on your trip, you're leaving your house and all of your everything, all of the things that bind you or keep you to that area, and you experience something new.
The tethering, the things we think are, yes.
And then we look forward to the end of the trip because we come back and we get to go back into that space and, then start reboot or redo whatever we're supposed to do. And usually we're talking a 2-week vacation. But for me, I started to go away longer and longer. And it was every time I come home, I'd go these 3 restaurants, I would eat this certain food, get all my clothes clean and sleep in my bed. And that was like the thing I looked forward to for about a week. And at a certain point, a week before I go home, and then at a certain point, I realized that I didn't need to do that anymore.
Right.
And that was my untethering. And I could do my laundry anywhere. And then I was fine to do the next round.
I love it. That's just perfect. I love it. And I resonate with that. I understand. And I appreciate you, and I appreciate you bringing up that very concept, because it's a beautiful thing. Because, like the turtles we are our home, right? We are our home base. And, that can open us to the what's next, the next new person, the next new adventure. That's awesome. Lisa, where can we find you? I know you post extraordinary pictures. We didn't even get into all these different temples and their meanings. Maybe we'll save that for another day. But where is I'll call it the Lisa ministry of your photos? You have an Instagram or something?
Yeah. So if you want to follow me, I'm at Lisa's Nomad Adventures, and you can go back. I've had it up a year now. So after every trip, when I'm finished, I'll put the highlights of the trip or some of the great pictures. And it will feed over to Facebook, but I don't like to use Facebook if I can get away with it. Instagram seems to be for me, the better medium.
Okay.
But I've seen I've also noticed everyone under 40 will have Instagram, and everyone over 40 will have Facebook.
I know. And I'm still the Facebook girl. Oh my gosh, Lisa Bolton, thank you so much. And again, I'll see you on the interwebs from wherever the winds are taking you. And I appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Heather. It's wonderful to be able to share my experiences with you. And feel free to reach out.
Thanks so much. And thanks everybody for listening. Please be sure to like, follow, and share this podcast. And if you'd like to be part of the show, send emails to podcast@lastingconversations.com, or follow us on Facebook at Lasting Conversations. And I will get the Instagram going. This is Lasting Conversations. We get to the heart of everything.